All right, so we're going to continue intercept form. So your first set of problems are going to say find the zeros. And we've kind of done this before in chapter 7, but if you had a problem like this, so remember that the zeros are the x-intercepts. They mean the same thing. So if you remember like intercept form, and I'll write it over here, and it's f of x or y, it doesn't matter. So we said intercepts are the p and the q, and remember that because they are negative in here, when we look at the problems, it means we're going to do the opposite because of that minus sign. So very simply on this one, the zeros are -5 and +1. Just the opposite of what we see. Okay, so the harder part is going to come in that they're not all set up like that. So we're going to have to factor. So take out what's in common. They all have a 4, and since that first one is negative, we're going to take out a -4. So negative negative is a positive 2x. Negative negative is a positive 1. So then I need to factor what's left. They're both positive. What times what is 1? That adds up to 2. It's just 1 and 1. So there actually is only one answer on this one because they're both like +1. They're both the same. So the answer is -1. The opposite of what you see is the 0. So if you notice, on this one we had a 1/3, and this one we had a -4 in the front. You can basically ignore it. It doesn't mean, it means something if you're graphing it. It doesn't mean anything, excuse me, if you're looking for the zeros. Okay, so if a number's in the front, that's fine. It actually makes it easier on some of them because you're taking out like a number and making everything smaller. Okay, so you'll have one or two where you have something like this. So it looks like it's, remember, anything with x squared needs to get factored. So remember, this is, when it's two terms, it's got to be a positive and a negative, and it's the square root. So the zeros are -6, +6, and +11. Opposite of what you see. Okay, so the first section of problems, you're just going to do it like odd. You're finding the zeros. Okay, so you're going to have to factor the problems to do that, but there's no graphing involved in that first set. Then you're going to have a second set of problems where you're going to match, and they'll all be in vertex form, or intercept form, and then you'll just have to match like find, you know, the intercepts of each one and match the graphs. So it shouldn't be too difficult. It's set up like this first one. And I suppose like the zeros are going to help. And what I mean by that is you'll have like just the parentheses like x plus 5 and x minus 1 like already there. You don't have to factor it or anything. And then you would just say, okay, like positive 5, okay, negative 5, positive 1. And then you want to look for the graph that crosses the x-axis at negative 5 and at positive 1. Okay, this, you know, the second one, you might think, well, shouldn't it cross like twice? Most of the time it does. This is like an exception. So it's saying it only crosses the graph like there. And you might say, well, how's that even possible? Like if it crosses it, it's going to have to come back up. It just like that's the vertex. Okay, and then this one on the right, you wouldn't have one like that because it's not a parabola graph. Okay, just for fun, this is a graph that kind of goes like that. Crosses in 1, 2, 3 spaces. So you won't see a graph like that last one, but you're just matching them up. Okay, and then the last, excuse me, the last group of problems is just going to say to graph using the zeros. So it's just another way of saying, you know, graph using the, so, you know, these are just graphs to kind of show you what it looks like, but, you know, the answer, you know, is like the red zeros and the negative 1 and then the negative 6, positive 11. You'll match up some graphs and then you'll graph a few at the end. All right, so that wraps up intercept form. Okay, so the main three forms that we use: standard form, which is the ax squared plus bx plus c, the vertex form, which we've done earlier this week, and then the intercept form. All right, so hopefully you're doing well. Almost the first week done of back to school stuff, so have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Intercepts. It's just different terminology. So if we had something like this, so we could say, well, our intercepts are -2 and +4, opposite. Okay, so -2 for that one, +4 for that one. And then our axis of symmetry is in the middle of those two. So it's, you know, 3 to the right and 3 to the left. So our axis of symmetry is x equals 1, which means I need to plug that in. And again, I always write, even if it's f of x, I always write y because I'm looking for a coordinate. The x part is 1. So 1 plus 2, 1 minus 4, so 3 and -3, so I get -6 and -3 or +18. Dang it, I should have drew my graph like way different. Let's try to fix that. So again, I think I did an example like this the other day, where if it's just, you know, I don't expect you to necessarily make like 18 marks. And because these points, again, are so spread out, I'm fine with you not doing anything else, okay? Because your graph's going to be pretty accurate regardless. The reason we do more points is we want it to be accurate, but with these being so spread out, it's going to be accurate, okay? So you don't need to put in more points. So, you know, what this 2 does, and there are -2, negative means it's going to go down, right? And then the 2 kind of stretches things out, so we're not doing transformations or anything like that, but it is kind of a stretch. But, you know, the number in the front is important because I could draw a graph like that. I got messed up at the end there, but it still has the same like intercepts. I could draw a graph like that. Still has the same intercepts. So that number in the front is really what changes how high or how low, or opens up or opens down, or all that stuff, even though you could still have x plus 2 and x minus 4. So number in the front is pretty important. So you'll have 4 of them. Actually, I'm going to change that. That'll be okay. Yeah, you'll have 4 of them to graph, but 2 of them you'll need to factor. Okay, so, you know, if you had like the problem like that, and it says use the zeros to graph, you would need to like go, okay, they're both like plus, and we have 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 plus 2 is 7. And then you could use -5 and +2 as the as the intercepts, and then like keep going. Okay, so 2 of them, no problem. They're set up for you, ready to go, and then 2 of them you need to factor. Okay, so you're only going to graph those last 4 problems at the end of the assignment. The first group, you're just finding the zeros.